Wrench Forever 77 posted a photo last month on an old truck forum. A 1998 Jeep Cherokee, 312,000 miles on the original engine. Underneath, he wrote 3 words: "They missed one." The post hit the front page of the forum within hours. Every mechanic who saw it knew exactly what he meant. 16 years ago, the federal government carried out the largest deliberate destruction of working American vehicles in this country's history. They called it Cash for Clunkers. They sold it to your neighbor as an environmental program. They sold it to Congress as economic stimulus. The men with grease under their fingernails who actually performed the killing knew the truth from day one. This was never about emissions. This was about erasing the analog truck from American driveways. This was about killing the engine your father could rebuild on a Saturday afternoon. This was about making certain that by 2026 you have no choice but to drive a vehicle that watches you, reports on you, and waits for the order to shut itself off. What you are about to hear is the forensic record of how they did it. Which machines they specifically targeted, what replaced them on the lot, and what is coming next year that almost nobody is talking about loud enough. Stay with me on this one. The window to act is closing faster than most owners realize. The mechanism the federal government chose for the execution was a chemical called sodium silicate. Mechanics know it by another name, liquid glass. To qualify for the federal rebate, dealerships were legally required to destroy the engine of every trade-in before the vehicle ever left the lot. The regulation was specific and absolute. The block had to be made permanently inoperable. No reselling, no parting out, no mercy for a 20-year-old straight six that still ran like it was new. The NHTSA final rule spelled out the procedure step by step. A technician drained the engine oil from the qualifying vehicle. He replaced it with sodium silicate solution. He started the engine. He let it run. Inside the block, the silicate heated and crystallized into a coating of fused glass. The pistons that had been gliding for 2 decades began grinding against that coating. The crankshaft slowed. Then it stopped. The engine welded itself into a single, unbreakable mass of dead metal that would never turn again. The trucks were towed to scrap yards and crushed, drivetrains intact in many cases, transmissions still functional, body panels still straight. Every part of the vehicle except the engine had to be made unrecoverable. You can still find the dealership footage online. Mechanics standing over open hoods, arms crossed, smoke pouring off the valve covers, a knocking sound that climbs in pitch and then collapses into silence. Some of those men looked exactly like they were attending a funeral. A few refused to do the work and walked out of the bay. In a sense, it was a funeral. By the time the program ended in August 2009, the official tally was 677,081 vehicles destroyed, not recycled, not donated, not auctioned for parts, executed on purpose by federal mandate. A used vehicle inventory that working families, young first-time buyers, and rural America had counted on for generations was simply erased in 8 weeks. Look, the rebate did move some new cars off some lots that summer. The Department of Transportation can show you the numbers if you want them. But the real result was something different. The price of a reliable used pickup never came back down. The supply of analog engines never recovered. And the buyers who had counted on a $4,000 work truck found themselves staring at a $14,000 loan instead. If you are still driving something that survived the crusher in 2009, you already know what they took from you. Hit the like button. Subscribe. We are going deeper than the headlines on this one. The trade-ins that rolled into those dealerships in the summer of 2009 were not junk. That word matters. The program called them clunkers. That was the language they needed in Washington. The reality on the lot was something else entirely. Among the engines specifically targeted for destruction were some of the most indestructible power plants American manufacturing ever produced. The Jeep 4.0-liter inline 6-cylinder, Originally an AMC design carried over when Chrysler bought the brand. Cast iron block. Mechanical fuel pump bolted to the side of the block, running on nothing but engine motion. Cherokee owners routinely drove past 300,000 miles on the original valve train. Forum threads cataloging 400,000-mile examples are still online. The GM 3800 V6, installed in Buick LeSabre, Pontiac Bonneville, and Oldsmobile 88 throughout the 1990s and into the 2000s. Consumer Reports called it one of the most reliable engines ever produced in North America. The 7.3-liter Power-Stroke diesel. The Chevy 350 small block bolted to a TH 350 transmission and an NP 205 gear-driven transfer case. The Ford 300 inline-6 running an HEI distributor and a mechanical fuel pump that needed no electricity at all to keep the truck moving. The Dodge 12-valve Cummins, an engine so over-engineered that it became a collector item before its production run was even finished. The square-body Chevy K-Series. The OBS Ford F-Series. Every one of them shared the same dangerous quality. They could be kept alive by ordinary people in ordinary garages with ordinary tools. No proprietary scan tool, no dealer software flash, no subscription to access the engine control module. On pre-1996 pickups, the engine control module was a sealed box you could pull, bench test, and swap on the side of a logging road if it ever failed. Wiring harness diagrams were printed in the owner's manual. 1996 is the cutoff year for a reason. That is when the federal OBD2 mandate took effect. Everything built before it was readable, repairable, and yours. Everything built after it began the slow march toward the locked dashboard. A man with a Craftsman wrench set and a service manual could keep one of these trucks alive for 40 years. That was the threat the auto industry could not tolerate. You cannot sell a working family a $52,000 new pickup on an 84-month loan if their 1997 F-150 refuses to die. You cannot underwrite a new vehicle finance pipeline if the used inventory underneath it costs $3,000 and lasts another decade. You cannot bring in dealer service revenue if customers fix their own trucks in their own driveways with parts off a Saturday morning swap meet table. The forever engines had to go. So the federal government wrote a law. And the dealers poured liquid glass into the crankcase. Once the analog vehicles were crushed, the replacement inventory was built on a completely different operating philosophy. Starting around 2010, the industry began systematically removing the mechanical interface from the driver. The tactile climate knobs that let you adjust the cabin temperature without taking your eyes off the road began disappearing. The dial radio you could operate with one finger, the pull-out parking brake, the cable-driven throttle. All of it was replaced with capacitive touchscreens running proprietary infotainment software. Uconnect on the Ram trucks, MyLink on the GM lineup, Sync on the Ford side. Different names on the badge, same trap underneath. A 1994 Chevy K1500 with a failed accessory is a problem you solve in your own driveway. You diagnose it with hand tools. You order the part from a counter. You install it on a Saturday afternoon. A 2019 Ram 1500 with a dead Uconnect screen is a problem you are not permitted to solve. The replacement head unit is locked to the vehicle identification number. The software flash requires a factory authorization key only the dealer holds. The diagnostic codes are not visible without manufacturer-specific hardware. You do not own the repair. The dealer owns the repair. You bring the truck in. You sign the work order. You wait for permission to drive your own vehicle home. That is not a maintenance issue. That is a transfer of control. Massachusetts voters tried to push back on this in 2012 with a Right to Repair ballot initiative. They passed an expanded version in 2020 by 75% of the vote. Maine passed its own version in 2023. The Automaker Trade Association responded by suing in federal court to block enforcement. The fight has been in litigation ever since. You did not vote for proprietary diagnostics. You did not consent to dealer-only repair. But you also did not get a real choice on the showroom floor. Add the CAN bus diagnostic architecture to this picture, and the trap closes completely. The deeper systems on a modern truck require manufacturer-specific software, manufacturer-specific cables, and in some cases, a manufacturer-specific subscription to even view the data your own vehicle is generating about itself. The $40 scanner from Harbor Freight that used to plug into the OBD2 port and tell you what was wrong now reads only the surface layer. Was some of this driven by genuine engineering progress? Sure. Airbag deployment logic and stability control are real safety achievements that have saved real lives. But that does not explain why a heated seat element on a 2021 truck requires a dealer recalibration. That is not safety. That is dependency engineered into the chassis. The backyard mechanic was not made obsolete by progress. The backyard mechanic was engineered out of existence by deliberate design choices. Now we get to the part the manufacturers do not put in the commercials. Since approximately 2012, nearly every new vehicle sold in the United States has shipped from the factory with a cellular modem already installed. You were not told. You were almost certainly not asked. The hardware is built into the dashboard, wired to the vehicle's central computer, and it begins broadcasting on a carrier network the moment you turn the key. Systems marketed under names like OnStar and similar connected services are collecting data continuously. They collect hard braking events, rapid acceleration events, GPS coordinates updated by the second, time of day, trip duration, and route history. That data does not stay in the vehicle. It is transmitted to manufacturer servers, processed, packaged, and in many cases sold downstream through data brokers, including LexisNexis Risk Solutions. LexisNexis then sells behavioral driving scores to insurance companies. The story broke wide open in March of 2024 when the New York Times published an investigation by reporter Kashmir Hill. Drivers across the country had been receiving insurance non-renewal notices with no explanation. When they requested their consumer reports, they found pages of driving event data going back years. Manufacturers had been quietly enrolling owners in connected driver programs at the dealership and selling the resulting data to the insurance industry. GM ended its OnStar Smart Driver data sharing within weeks of the article going public. But the data already collected was in the system. A Reddit user named uHighwaymanOBS dropped a comment under a video like this one a few months back. He said he requested his data from the manufacturer, and they sent him 800 pages on one truck, covering 4 years. The Mozilla Foundation published a report in 2023 calling cars the worst product category they had ever reviewed for consumer privacy. Every major manufacturer failed. Not some of them, all of them. A 1995 Chevy K2500 does not carry a cellular modem. It does not broadcast your location. It does not generate a behavioral profile for an algorithm in a server farm. The driver of a pre-OBD2 pickup is not a data product. He is just a man driving home from work. That is the difference between a tool you own and a device that monitors you on behalf of someone else. This is the part that sent the truck forums into a complete uproar last year. The panic is not paranoia. The panic is justified. Buried inside the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, signed into law in November of 2021, is a provision known as Section 24220. The official language calls it Advanced Impaired Driving Prevention Technology. The plain English translation is a federal requirement that every new passenger vehicle sold in the United States contain a system capable of detecting driver impairment and disabling the vehicle. The technology was not invented from scratch. It was developed over more than a decade by a public-private consortium called DADSS, the Driver Alcohol Detection System for Safety, jointly funded by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, and the auto industry, with heavy lobbying support from organizations like MADD. The mechanism under consideration includes interior-facing cameras, eye-tracking sensors, steering input monitoring, and, in some prototypes, touch sensors built into the wheel that can read your skin chemistry. Some versions sample your breath passively through cabin air sensors. If the system decides you should not be driving, the system has the authority to act, not to warn you, not to call your spouse, to disable the vehicle. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration issued an advance notice of proposed rulemaking on this in January of 2024. The agency is required by the statute to act. The timeline pointed toward model year 2026 vehicles meeting the requirement, with full implementation across the new vehicle fleet shortly after. Once that is standard, every new car sold in America will carry a federal kill switch governed by an algorithm you cannot audit, appeal, or override. What happens when the interior camera fogs up in a Wisconsin January? What happens when the system misreads a driver wearing sunglasses? What happens when a software update arrives overnight and changes the threshold without notifying the owner? What happens when a false positive strands a working man on a back road at 2 in the morning? There is no human in the loop. There is no court date. There is no second opinion. The vehicle decides. This is no longer ownership. This is a revocable permission slip to travel. And the entity that issues the permission is not you. This is why right now in driveways across the country, there is a quiet rebellion underway. A growing number of Americans are hunting down PREOBD2 trucks built before 1996, before the touchscreen, before the cellular modem, before the kill switch mandate. And they are paying prices that would have been laughed at 5 years ago. A 1995 Ford F-250 with the 7.3-liter Power Stroke and a manual transmission is commanding $18,000 to $25,000 at auction in clean condition. A 1994 Chevy K1500 with the 350 small block, the TH400 transmission, and the NP205 transfer case can clear $20,000. A second-generation Dodge Ram with the 12-valve Cummins has become a serious collector item, with clean examples selling for $30,000 and up. Square-body Chevys that were headed to the scrapyard a decade ago now appear at Mecum auctions. Prices in the pre-OBD2 segment have climbed steadily every year since 2020. These are not garage queens. These are work trucks bought to be worked. What makes them worth the premium is what they do not contain. No cellular modem, no proprietary infotainment, no CAN bus lockout on basic repairs, no algorithm with authority over the ignition, a mechanical fuel pump that runs without electricity, an HEI distributor you can rebuild on a tailgate with a screwdriver and a feeler gauge. Parts available at every auto parts store from Bangor to Bakersfield. Repairable by anyone who has ever held a 3/8 ratchet. A machine that belongs entirely to the person who paid for it. This is the Ghost Fleet. The survivors that did not roll into a dealership in the summer of 2009. The engines that escaped the sodium silicate execution. The trucks the federal program tried to erase and somehow missed. U-Square-Body88 wrote it best in a thread last month. My grandfather's truck is now worth more than the new one parked in the next bay. The reason is simple. His truck still belongs to him. Paying a premium for a 30-year-old pickup is not nostalgia. It is the most clear-headed vehicle purchase an American driver can make right now if he understands the full picture. Every new vehicle on the lot today comes with surveillance hardware, dealer-locked repair systems, and a federal kill switch mandate that goes live next year. The window to find a pre-OBD2 survivor is closing. Prices are climbing every quarter. The supply was deliberately cut in 2009, and it has never been rebuilt. So here is the question. Did your truck survive the crusher? What analog machine is sitting in your driveway right now? Drop the year and the engine in the comments. Hit subscribe so the next investigation lands in your feed. And whatever you do, do not sign for the digital trap.